A man gave me a mission. He told me there are groups around the world that are healing the planet. In this film, I will show you the Alchemists. I thought for a while I wanted to do developmental aid in third world countries because there my help is needed. Until I realized if I do agriculture responsibly here at home, the whole world benefits, also the third world countries.
Air is the corpse of light, alchemically speaking.
Pharmacy is alchemy. Pharmacy is preparing things in nature that can be poisons. Belladonna, Rauwolfia, things that are poisons as they are in nature, transform those into something that's a medicine for people.
The composting process is a very complex alchemical process, yet we understand very little about it.
There's a saying in Māori, "Whatu ngāru ngono ngā tangata, toitu te whenua." People will disappear, the land will remain. And if we don't look after the land, people will disappear a lot earlier.
What is if I try to do something for my country as a model in the desert, to give a space, a land for life for people. Not only that they can live, but they can develop themselves.
People think politicians are leading the parade. They're not. They're following, always. Because, matter of fact, there was an old expression that said, if you're 3 steps ahead of them, they'll hate you. If you're 2 steps ahead of them, they'll admire you. If you're 1 step ahead, they'll follow you, right?
Humanity has only 2 choices, either to start once again in every field of endeavor, to learn from the whole of nature, from the relationships within the whole cosmos, or to allow both nature and human life to degenerate and die off. There is no other choice. Today, no less than in ancient times, we are in need of knowledge that can really enter into the inner workings of nature. We are also faced with a great inner transformation in nature. The natural gifts, naturally inherited knowledge, traditional medicines, and so on that have been passed down from ancient times are all losing their value. We need to acquire new knowledge in order to be able to enter into all the interrelationships of these things.
You know, the criticism I get with my friends, the other conventional farmers, they just say, oh, biodynamics is just muck and magic. And then I explain to them the science behind, well, it's the new science of water. And by the time I'm finished with them, they understand when I say to them, it's not muck and magic, it's actually quantum agriculture. Because we are trying to make them have a shift in their minds so that it's not the chemical composition of water that's important, but it is the structure of water.
Every farm is unique. Every person is unique. So the basic overall concept in biodynamics is that of the farm is an individuality. And so the more you can get for your farm from your farm, so the farm is resilient, it's self-sustaining, even the concept of self-regenerating. If there's illness or things out of order, the farm can heal that. It has an intelligence to, I mean, it's kind of a goal in homeopathic medicine for people, is you try to strengthen the individuality through the medicine that they can take hold and heal, not just the substance. So similar in the farming, you're trying to create an organism that has capacities to heal itself, to come back in drought conditions or flood conditions or whatever.
I talked to a few people in the biodynamic world, and it just, as a biologist, it just made a lot of sense to me. It helps you with your time organization, it makes sense scientifically, and it's fun. And you see that it works.
I always could tell the difference when I was eating biodynamic food from other food. And I know that's completely anecdotal and completely unscientific, but it was my experience. And the experience was that the difference was that the biodynamic food always tasted more complicated. I don't know, but I know people talk about wine in that way, you know, wine, people who are really wine connoisseurs speak that way.
When we first started farming biodynamically or holistically, we had to kind of keep that a secret because a lot of people associated that with voodoo and witchcraft and things like that for So for many years we didn't talk so much about it, but now I realize that the very same people that they were so skeptical after tasting our grape or tasting our wine, they are asking questions.
When you think through the whole proposition in 1977 to go into the desert, apply biodynamic agriculture, which was never done in Egypt, in Africa, in any country in the same climate area. Or when you think about applying fair trade, and fair trade as a term did not even exist in 1977, so to apply this economics of love, which my father was promoting, it seemed mission impossible, because it was very clear that communism is out and not able to compete with capitalism. Or if you look into this idea of developing a local market for biodynamic products in Egypt, a country where the GDP per capita is about 1/10 of the developed world, then again that doesn't seem to be a very successful business model. But it gets even worse when you hear that from the very beginning my father was committed to dedicate 10% of the working time of our employees to self-development. So 10% of 2 employees, okay, but if you imagine that we now have up to 2,000 people, so 200 people are not productively working, but they are learning, this seems to be a very expensive luxury. And so again, people did not believe that this could ever work. Or 10% of our added value invested into research and development. In a country where the overall spendings on R&D are below 0.02%. Or finally, if you imagine that from the very beginning my father was dreaming to set up a bigger community and to not only invest into the SECAM initiative, but also in the community around us. And again, the term corporate social responsibility did not yet exist. So what is the logic behind an investment of a corporation into the community around it? It's an additional expense, but it's not increasing its competitiveness, it's increasing its costs and expenses. So having all this said as a business model, you can imagine that the feedback my father and me got at the very beginning was unbelief, illusion, dream, crazy, mission impossible, and so on. And over time, when things changed and it showed that this miracle is possible and things are working, the mission impossible part was exchanged with admiration, and this is unbelievable, and this is a miracle, and it's very, very inspiring, and so on. And I hope that with the work we are doing here every day, in the end we will inspire more and more people in the corporate world, but also in the civil society, to apply this kind of business model to make themselves more competitive and hence apply all these 4 dimensions of sustainable development.
Was denkt ihr über das Sprichwort, du bist, was du isst?
Oh je, du bist, was du isst? Keine Ahnung. Du bist, was du isst? Sie fragen mich jetzt zum Morgen was.
Weiß ich nicht, weil kenne ich nicht so gut die Sprache.
And recognize that we're only here for a moment, really. We're passing through. We have an obligation, a responsibility to the people who will come after us and to the planet on which we all depend, to do the right thing in regards to, back to the point, agriculture. And I believe biodynamics is the answer to that.
Lange Zeit war die Menschheit stolz, dass
For a long time, mankind has been proud that only 1% of the population work in agriculture. But considering unemployment rates and how many people are unhappy with their job, it's time for a change. We should acknowledge that agriculture is something wonderful and vital. As we become less reliant on artificial vitamins and reduce the chances of getting more allergies, we don't have to spend a huge amount of money on health issues. If only 5% of the population would work in agriculture again. Together, we must strive for a common understanding that we value agriculture as much as a good quality car.
Da erkenne ich, was Novalis gesagt hat.
Now I understand what Novalis has said. We are on a mission. We are called to the cultivation of the earth. I form the earth, so the earth becomes more and more conscious and a harmonious whole with all its creatures. This is the deeper understanding that Rudolf Steiner made available to us again, and that we should be very grateful for.
Tiefgehende Form uns wieder verfügbar gemacht hat. Das ist ja nichts Neues.
It is nothing new, but through his great cognitive capability, he has unraveled ancient knowledge out of the spiritual world again.
Geistwelt wieder heraus erforscht.
He has lifted the veil of the Isis, the wisdom of the world.
Rudolf Steiner, after the agriculture lectures, gave a lecture to the youth in that area. It's printed, it's called Youth's Search in Nature, a single lecture to young people. And he says that just as compost fertilizes the fields, so do our higher thoughts nourish those on the other side of the threshold. Those who have died, those who are living in the spiritual world, are nourished by our higher thoughts. Just as we use compost in the fields to foster healthy growth.
Wir haben im Laufe der letzten 40 Jahre gerade
Over the last 40 years, we have seen some major changes, in particular to the scientific basis of biodynamics. In the 70s, when biodynamic agriculture was first acknowledged by the scientific world, it was subjected to ridicule.
wurde noch sehr belächelt. Inzwischen
Since then, a good collaboration with many scientific institutes has evolved. This shows that we are now respected by the scientific world.
Also das heißt, wir sind in der wissenschaftlichen Welt angekommen und es gibt jedes Jahr
And every other year, there is a scientific conference on organic farming, where subjects from biodynamic research are presented and discussed.
Hat stattgefunden, auch immer mit Themen, die aus der biologisch-dynamischen Forschung vorgestellt und diskutiert werden.
And people are waking up that the other planets and the stars and the zodiac all have their effect, and that there's more and more scientific proof. And that's one of the weird things nowadays, this question of scientific proof. And I'm very aware with it around the whole GM, genetically engineered plants issue, because the scientists don't agree, and there's a lot of things twisted and hidden, and I would even go so far as there's a lot of lying going on within, not just between scientists, but within people who support different views. And it's very difficult in the end of the day to know what's true, because there's a lot of what I would call bad science. And for instance, around the whole GM thing, there's this Frenchman, Seralini, who did those experiments for 2 years on the rats, which showed that the GM and the glyphosate had a massive effect if you did experiments not just for 3 months, as all the companies have done in the past, but over 2 years. And then, of course, his science was criticized. Now, that's since been proven not to be the issue, and that it's true. But this is what I mean. You get into this murky realm of what is true and what isn't.
Die große Gefahr, was auf dem Moment da ist,
There is something dangerous happening on the market for agricultural chemicals and fertilizers. Companies like Monsanto have realized that more than 12% of agricultural businesses in Switzerland are farming organically, and even more in other countries. This is a huge market. They don't necessarily want to produce poisonous stuff or GE, they want to make money. In another 10 years' time, Monsanto will be a supplier of biochemicals and fertilizer. And this is what makes biodynamic agriculture different to other biological farming. We are a complete and independent operating system. We produce these products ourselves. We don't need to buy in EM. We have that in our own preparations, which we produce on our farms.
Ja, wir haben das ist in unseren Präparaten drin, das können wir selber herstellen, jeden Betrieb selber.
Right now, I'm stirring what Steiner called preparation 500, or other people call it the cow horn preparation. And what it is it's cow manure, fresh, collected from the fields from ideally lactating cows on a certain time of noon. And we put those in the horn and we bury it for 6 months and dig them up. And we just dug them up a few days ago. And because it's spring, we do this twice a year. We put it in warm water, ideally heat it up with fire, and we stir it for an hour. And we're stirring it so that if you could see the bucket, it's a big vortex. And then you reverse the stirring and it causes chaos and all sorts of bedlam in there. And then you go around the other direction. And what this is doing, because of the warm temperature and all the enzymes in the cow's gut and the good beneficial bacteria and fungi that occurs over winter, it creates a beautiful soup of microorganisms that are incredibly beneficial to the soil and to the growth process and to cation exchange in the soil. So it's just like having a really good digestive system with lots of diverse microorganisms so we don't get allergies and have gluten intolerances and peanut butter allergies and yeah.
The energy that you've created is held within the water, and as you spray that water and it connects with the water in the plant life and on the soil where you're spraying it, it also has this effect, this energetic effect of creating a field of energy that, as in your passing, that if there is moisture in the air close to the land, it will have a drawing effect. As you are connecting with moisture, it will have a drawing effect and maybe bring moisture down that is close to the earth and bring it to the earth at that breathing in time of day. You're actually applying it late in the day when the soil is doing its natural breathing in. That's why we do particularly the timing of the application of the 500 as the cooling and the moisture is settling out of the air onto the soil, and so it has this effect of being pulled straight in and connecting.
I always find it quite interesting when I do a guided tour on our farm with my colleagues from conventional farming. When entering the stable, let's say in wintertime when all animals are kept inside, people often mention two things. There is no bad smell, which I believe is a very important sign of quality, and it is a good atmosphere. I have a friend who lives in Brazil and who does introduction courses for biodynamic preparations. And he says, when there's a group of people getting together, some are illiterates who can't read and write, and the others are university professors with 3 degrees. Yet everyone experiences something similar, something that changes their lives. When you step in and actually do it, then biodynamics has the power to change lives. But therefore, you have to do it yourself. It's about the spirituality of the hands, not only the knowledge. It's also about the knowledge, but not only.
You can go on science, on proper experiments, but you can also go from what your heart tells you with various things, and you know, what feeds us in the food is the question. Is it just literally what the chemical constituents, the minerals, or is there also forces in there that actually feed you in a certain way? And there's more and more scientific experiments showing that these forces exist and that they play a major part. And that's what we in biodynamics have been saying for a long time.
Wir selber im Betrieb, also durch das ja den Mond.
On our farm, we produce quark, a fresh dairy product. We milk the cows and put the milk in a heating cabinet with cream forming on top. We found that on days when the moon is in a fire sign, for example with the moon in Leo, there is double the cream on the milk.
Mond in die Löwe steht, zum Beispiel, dann haben wir mehr Sahne auf die Milch.
And this has nothing to do with the food the cows get. In summer, one could argue that they've been on different pastures, but in winter, they always get the same hay. And even then, you can see the difference, depending on where the moon is in the signs of the zodiac.
Here's an interesting story. We know of someone who is a scientist who works with testing seed, and he also gardens at a really high altitude. And he had read the agricultural lectures that Rudolf Steiner gave, and he thought, oh well, that's interesting, and he put aside the book. The lectures, and then about 6 months later he woke up in the middle of the night and he was thinking about the horn manure and the horn silica, and he said, well, I'll see if this makes a difference. So he decided to make the horn manure, and he made it, and he sprayed it on his garden at I don't know, it was quite high, I think it was 8,000 feet, was it? Mm-hmm. And that's really high for gardening. And then he said, well, I'll just spray it over here on this guy's pasture. And he decided, being a scientist, he would spray half the pasture. And he noted where he stopped spraying. And, you know, he watched his garden, and then he didn't really notice too much. But then the cows were brought to the neighbor's land where he had sprayed, and they came on to the grass, and they went right to the side where he had sprayed, and they ate down to the line of where he had stopped spraying before they ate the other pasture, and he was just bowled over by that experience.
Recently at a soil preparation course, I've heard this again. In Chernobyl, in the areas where compost preparations have been spread, a far lower level of radioactivity has been measured. Just 50 meters further, a high level of radioactivity, and on the compost field, nearly nothing.
Auf dem Kompostplatz fast nichts.
Is it possible to actually take the dark material and make it into a medicine? The difficulty is, when you do that, can you do it in a humble way, or are you doing it in an inflated way, searching for power? So there's an old saying among the alchemists that the old people wanted to reveal the mystery, but the contemporary people want to solve the mystery. And the problem is, when you solve the mystery dies.
You'd asked a question about light. Like, what is light? And, you know, maybe I should let you handle this one, but the idea that today one of the major staples in the world is the potato, and Steiner had some interesting things to say about the potato. First of all, it's a member of the nightshade family, and just the word nightshade, kind of darkness. It's in the ground. It's a tuber in the ground. If you contrast that, just kind of imaginatively, with the light root, which strives up towards the light and then brings that light down into this very long tuber into the ground, I think just that is an interesting picture of a different type of nutrition.
Die Lichtwurzel ist eine Knolle.
The light root is a tuber which originates from China and is the only plant that can store this live ether to such a high degree.
Äther und Lebensäther, insbesondere den Lichtäther.
Live ether and light ether, especially the latter, which nowadays people very much need in their diet, says Rudolf Steiner. He made this statement after he'd finished an agricultural lecture in 1924, when he was already on the way to his car.
Am Ende des landwirtschaftlichen Kurses.
He was asked if there was anything else people could do in biodynamic agriculture other than what he'd just taught during his lecture. He pointed out that we still had to domesticate a plant. In particular, a root tuber, which would be essential for future nutrition because of its capability to store this light ether.
Hier heimisch machen, die für die Ernährung in der Zukunft eben wichtig ist, weil sie diesen Lichtäther speichern kann.
My aim has always been to promote spiritual thinking with the help of light roots that influence human beings the opposite way that potatoes do.
Was ich vorhin schon gesagt habe, das spirituelle Denken ermöglicht und dass die Kartoffel aber den Auftrag.
The function of potatoes at the beginning of the 19th century, when they were first cultivated, was to promote materialistic thinking, because we had to go through that process. As we can't fully digest potatoes in our stomach, our mind has to participate in its transformation as well. Therefore, the part of the mind where spiritual and creative thinking takes place is called upon to take part in the digestive process. And this, among other things, has driven us into materialistic thinking.
Und das hat uns auch mit, nicht nur in den Materialismus hinein.
Light roots have the opposite effect. Their digestion doesn't strain the mind. On the contrary, the energies of the light ether necessary for the thinking process are dissolved in the mouth as we eat and taken up with the business of digestion in our body, which doesn't get strained at all.
Hineingehen kann als Energie in unseren Körper und uns nirgends belasten.
We can usually say that ordinary conventional plants have become more or less separated from the cosmos. The main goal of biodynamic agriculture, with its preparations and other devices, is to connect plants with the cosmos once more.
Die Pflanze wieder mit dem Kosmos zu verbinden. Und das ist letztlich
This helps people deal more easily with cosmic thoughts and interconnect more easily with the cosmos. This will make it the plant of the future.
Und deswegen wird die Nahrung der Zukunft sein, dass wir Pflanzen haben, die in dieser Art der Wirtschaftsweise gepflegt werden.
Farmers are sort of the pioneers of this new consciousness. I think farmers who are the ones every day interacting with nature historically have had a more holistic way of seeing nature and relating to nature. And I think biodynamics meets that intuitive way of relating to nature that farmers have always had, actually, good farmers.
I was really drawn to was this practical spirituality, like a spirituality that worked with the nitty-gritty, day-to-day things in life. That was important to me. Yeah.
I started conducting with 16, had an orchestra and so on, and then came this very clear decision, conscious decision, and I said, no, it's more important to become a farmer because there will be so many musicians around, but not many farmers left.
And what's happening around food and agriculture almost looks like
Sometimes I try to think that the time spirits have maybe chosen agriculture and food as a venue to really enact some much needed change.
There's a really interesting thing which I thought for the last 40 years, and there was this idea or this concept of that a biodynamic farm can only function if there's the right community around it, okay? And I came to the conclusion in my 40 years of biodynamic agriculture that only a biodynamic farm can actually attract the right community around it.
We're trying to, by involving many different people in the farm, we're trying to build a kind of more brother and sisterly kind of working without looking at the bottom line. Our bottom line is, for us, is the farm serving people.
Any future-bearing work these days has to be collaboration. I don't think that it's based on sort of one strong individuality just showing the way and everybody's kind of falling. So it has to be, I think it needs to be collaborations.
Everybody is equal here. There's nobody who is a boss over anyone. Yes, Jody and I are the owners, but we're right there with them. We're not separate from them. When farms fail, they don't fail because they don't make enough money. They don't fail because their soils aren't productive enough or whatever it might be. They fail because of the social process. And so when we start the day, we want to emphasize this connection. So we are allowing people, first of all, to make sure they're present. We want everybody to be present. And that takes time. You need to take a few minutes. And it doesn't matter what exercise you do, if it's eurythmy or another exercise, allowing people to feel their body. Then we read a verse. It brings something of solemnity, something that makes it clear that what we're doing here is very serious. Yes, we are joyful about it. We think it's very important that we have fun, but at the same time, a little bit like, okay, this is really an important day. Every day when we start, it's an important day.
There's a way to work for each other, and we have to find that way. If we don't, I think our time on Earth is really, the human being is going to fade away. But that, really learning how to help each other is what we're here for.
Wichtig an der Gemeinschaft ist,
for a community to be functional, it's important that everyone has his own living area to withdraw to. You might have a joint meal or do other activities together, but everyone needs his own living space. This is very important. The other requirement is that everyone has a clearly defined range of duties.
Ganz wichtige Voraussetzung. Die andere ist, dass es klar definierte Aufgabenbereiche hat.
One takes care of the processing of the milk, one takes care of animal husbandry, another one of cultivation of the land, and so on. Depending on the size of the business, this can be organized in different ways. It's when people feel that they have to do everything together, that's when things fail. It simply doesn't work that way. You need your own space. People are becoming more and more individual, and that's a good thing.
Die Leute werden immer individueller. Und das ist so. Und das ist auch richtig so.
We want our own space, a scope for development, and we need it. It's pretty much impossible to live like a community 500 years ago. That would be very anachronistic. We have to form communities for very different and new reasons. These reasons might be small, but our individuality is already that big. So our individuality has grown, but living together and respecting the other one as much as ourselves, that's something new we have to practice. Living together without a hierarchy telling us that we have to. When I allow the other person to develop in me in a positive way, then the other person changes. I change. And through that, the whole world changes.
Und dadurch verändert sich die ganze Welt.
we proved now that the biodynamic food, which where you pay more for that, is much less expensive than the conventional food. And for the long run, for our globe, we cannot afford putting much more energy in producing chemicals for the conventional food. We don't have this luxury anymore to produce all the chemicals.
To ask the question, how can we feed the world, is the wrong question. In fact, I think many of our problems nowadays are the result of asking the wrong question, and then you get the wrong answer. So you need to start with farming and food, you need to start locally. And then you go out in concentric circles. So like, for example, in many parts of the world, modern agriculture has made people completely dependent on food imports because all the food they grow is being exported. So we have to start again to feed our local communities, and then you go outward. And then I have quite some faith and trust that we'll be able to feed individuals on this planet appropriately.
We can feed the world. And one of the points I make, because a lot of people say, oh, well, you can't produce enough using traditional agriculture, that you can't feed the world with traditional agriculture. And that's just not true. It's more of a problem of distribution. And that's where we get to the ethical question that you raised earlier. I mean, if distribution channels were more rational and put product where it was needed, then you wouldn't have the challenge to the planet.
I actually think that business today has kind of replaced religion. So the fact that it has replaced religion may not be a good thing, but it is a reality in my view. And so as a result of it being such a powerful force, I believe business is the strongest force for change.
The future viability of biodynamic agriculture economically in this country and around the world, Thea touched on this earlier in terms of collaboration. I think besides the fact that we need new forms of capital, we just need new business models that allow many farms to work together and to partner with distributors and to partner with restaurants and partner with grocery stores. I mean, we need new economic models for this new agriculture to thrive.
This miracle of SECAM has many fathers and mothers, you can imagine. One of them are our partners, one of them are our network of friends and crazy ethical banks. Because at the very beginning, when we came out with this crazy idea of SECAM in the desert, nobody else, no commercial bank, would have given us money to start this great adventure here. And so without GLS, Triodos, Eukocredit, and other development banks like the Austrian Development Bank and the German Development Bank, SECAM would not exist today. And so I can only tell you that I'm very happy that there are ethical banks out to support this kind of development ideas like SECAM. And I can also tell you from my own experience that without them, we would not stand here today.
A lot of the work we do at RSF is in the area of food and agriculture. And so within the area of agriculture, and for what we do, we try to work with money in the same way a biodynamic farmer works with his or her farm or her soil, and in a holistic way, and trying to increase soil fertility is kind of how we try to look at financial transactions. We try and increase the vibrancy of the humanity in a financial transaction. I absolutely think it's possible to experience love through the economic system and the financial system. That in a way is the entire reason why we exist here at RSF Social Finance. When we say that our purpose or our objective is to transform the way the world works with money, it is for that reason.
In respect to the farm, money is an interesting subject, and I have experienced money as a very, very destructive force, even when it's used as a positive, with a positive intention, but it can be a very, very, especially in farms, a very destructive element. When it seemed to be most hopeless, at the moment you focus totally on what matters on this farm, the money started flowing. and directly related to what we were doing, not donations at all.
I don't know, and I kind of gave up a long time ago on trying to solve the world's problems. What I do have some control over is my own little world and my own actions and what I do in this world, on this plane. And the thought that somehow I might be able to leave a little tiny piece of the earth a little bit better than how I found it, and kind of raise it up to a new level of vitality, and in so doing raise myself up maybe a little bit more than I would have otherwise. That's kind of all I need to keep me going along this journey. Yeah.
I feel my work is going now more consciously, and where I feel as the biodynamic movement has not been able to put enough emphasis in a modern language on, and that is it'd be helpful, I hate to say we have to because that's not correct, but I think it's very helpful to really learn what it means to have mindful life practices. I'm actually now maintaining that to cultivate our inner landscapes, as I like to say, is as important or more important than our outer landscapes. I think it's an inherent piece of biodynamics. I mean, Steiner didn't make any secrets around it. He names it. He talks about meditation and the farmer very openly and very directly. In my whole training, nobody ever talked to me about that. It was never part of sort of an official training. And so a new initiative now we started at Hawthorne Valley. We founded something called the Institute for Mindful Agriculture. Is sort of expressing that fact that I believe that's an area we need to do a lot of work. And my feeling is if we can make progress there, collaboration we will see collaboration in a whole different light.
When we talk about this shift in consciousness, it's not about me trying to beat the corporations. I'm not in competition with them. They're not in competition with me. At some point, we need to believe and acknowledge that if we are doing everything right, is that people will follow. People will see that. We don't need more than 4 or 5% of the population to shift their consciousness. But to truly see, because this is the question I have for the biodynamic movement. Are we really taking this question seriously? At the moment that a biodynamic farmer feels he is in competition, is he really seeing this interconnected seriously? I'm challenging them. If we are having one foot in one world and one foot in the other, we can't do that. We can't afford to do that.
Biological, and in particular, biodynamic agriculture is the only sustainable option. Biodynamic businesses, which have their own products and preparations, are self-sufficient and independent from big multinational corporations. This is what keeps people healthy and is, from an economic point of view, the one and only way to go.
I would like to say to those young people that are thinking about farming and wanting to get involved in some way, don't wait. Look around you in the local area. If you're interested in what we're doing, contact us. There's farms over the whole of the U.S. and there's some really fine trainings on farms. Don't wait.
Biodynamic becomes a heart matter, an inner passion. And when I talk to my young people and I say, well, have you ever thought about dying for an idea? And then they say, and they said, why should we die for an idea? And I said, only if you're willing to die for an idea, then you actually connect yourself deep enough with what you're doing. And that is why I'm going that far. If you are willing, to live and die with the place where you work, you can unlock this incredible individuality of the farm.
When you look back after something that was complex and complicated that you achieved, you suddenly realize that you had a karmic connection with all these people all along. And you then realize that you belong to a network of people that have come to Earth with a certain mission to introduce something new that may be not generally part of culture, but culture desperately needs. So you have a kind of forming of relationships that can be a strong core to protect a certain community.